Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the SEMA Collision Repair and Refinish stage, powered by iCar and SERS. And this morning I have my good buddy Scott Van Hooley with me, and we're here to talk a little bit about our SRS and Recycled Parts Summit. So I guess we should probably start with explaining to everybody what is a summit.
So, with the repairability summits, we started these quite a few years ago, but it's gathering together the industry to do a technical discussion on whatever topic is a hot button topic of the industry where we need to get some clarification. So we bring together insurers, collision repairers, OEMs, tool and equipment, anybody else that has relevant knowledge to the subject, and we have that conversation just to identify the issues and come up with a best practice that's really an industry vetted best practice. So it's not just iCar sitting in a back room coming up with things. We actually get the industry involved and get their input. So once we have that discussion, we'll have a draft best practice or material that we go over. Once we've had the summit, we send it out to everyone that was invited to the summit to get their feedback as well. And then it will either lead us to further research on something or develop a best practice that the industry then will have as documentation.
So I think one of the keys to take out of this is that this is, again, not iCar sitting in a lab coming up with this. We're talking to industry experts. We're talking to all different segments of the industry to come up with the best practice for the industry. So it's not an iCar, I guess we call it an iCar best practice, but it's something that's vetted by the industry and it's industry approved. So we'll get into this one here in a second, the recycled parts. I guess the most recent prior to that we did was around our EV disconnecting best procedure. So for somebody to go out and see that one's pretty important, so I wanted to get it in here. They can go to the RTS website and just go. There's a link right at the top of the page, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, on the left menu, there is the left menu tab has iCar best practices, and it has all the best practices we've developed, and that one happens to be right on top because it's the most recent one.
All right, great. So let's dive into this one, recycled parts. This is something that we have a lot of information on. We have current best practices from iCar. We have a course that's recycled parts considerations that just give you an idea of some of the things you should think about when using recycled parts, things to look for, when it's really appropriate to use recycled parts, and in some cases where you might not want to go down that path, for example, airbags and things like that. What additional tools are there on the RTS site to help people understand recycled parts and what's available?
So on the RTS, we have a best practice around not using recycled airbag components, so the modules and things like that. And that was something that was actually developed quite a few years ago because the industry was looking at it and all the safety items and all the issues with them. You have the Takata airbag recalls. So that's kind of another factor in that is
right.
that over time some of these can get water damage and things like that. So that one's been around for quite a while. We also have the best practice around no full body sectioning or clipping because we were seeing so many people posting on social media about how they were doing this great clipping job and they were cutting through reinforcements. They were just doing whatever they wanted because that's the way they always did it, not realizing that they're cutting up ultra high strength steel and totally changing the strength characteristics. So that was one of the probably easiest summits we ever did because it was, here's the verbiage, everyone was in complete agreement that you should not be clipping cars, and so that is on the website as well. And one of the most recent ones for recycled parts was actually the rolled hem flange. So on the quarter panel, it's like a door skin on the wheel well, and when you have something that's folded over onto itself, and you have to unfold it and fold it back down with a recycled part, there were durability issues and quality issues that the industry said we really shouldn't be doing this. And so we came up with that best practice as well. So
Yeah. Probably not to mention the fact that it just wouldn't be practical. If you think about the work involved to be able to release that hem flange without destroying it, and then be able to put it back on another vehicle, that the time required to do that type of repair just wouldn't make a lot of sense in most cases.
yeah, and not to mention that you've got something bent over on itself, so that bend radius has already been stretched. You bend it again, and it's like that paper clip all over again, and it's never going to be right. It's never going to be the same. Plus, you have adhesive in there that it's very difficult to get in there to get the adhesive off in the first place, and so the panel gets damaged while you're removing it. And if you look at the OEM procedure, they actually just tell you to grind the edge just like you do on a door skin.
Yeah.
But on a door skin, it's a little easier because we're taking it off, and
Right.
I haven't seen too many used door skins go on.
Right. So I want to go back just a second to, you were talking a little bit about the vehicles being clipped or sectioning. And, we have courses on sectioning, help people understand when it's appropriate. But the number one thing we tell everybody, if there's not a procedure, an OEM procedure that says you can section this part, you don't section that part. Always follow the OEM recommendations.
Well, and that's another good point to bring up, is that even though these are industry vetted ICAR best practices, if an OEM had a position statement or a procedure that allowed for something, that would take precedent over this. So the OEM is still number one on whatever has to be done. So if an OEM ever said, yeah, it was fine to clip cars, in that case, on that vehicle, you could do it. But pretty much all the OEMs have one that came out with a position statement quite a while ago that said, yeah, you can't clip cars.
Yeah.
So
if we take this to the next step and we start thinking about SRS and wiring repairs, what do we have on that RTS site? I keep plugging the RTS site, but it's a great spot to go for information. What do we have on there that helps people understand manufacturer position statements around wiring repairs and SRS repairs and things like that?
So on the RTS website, we have some collision repair news articles, and these are open to everyone, but it's basically we've gathered together all the OEM information on restraints wiring repair, because that was a question we were getting a lot, and it was kind of hard to find sometimes where that information is. And so we came up with this, and some of the OEMs do allow wiring repair, and some do not. And so you have to know which OEM allows and doesn't allow. And the OEMs that do allow it typically have quite a few restrictions on what you can do, where you can do it, and what materials you use. But they do allow it in some cases. So that was one of the resources that we have. But then we also have the OEM restraint system part replacement search. And that's basically you put in your make and model, and you can see all the things that are required after an airbag deployment to be replaced and or inspected. And so that's something that it's available in other places as well. Some of the estimating systems have it. But if you're coming on the RTS website, we wanted to have it in one spot for you so it was easy access.
Yeah. The other thing we've got for this is we do have a number of online courses as well that will help understand things like wiring inspection, looking for damage, wiring repairs, connector repairs, things like that. So we do have information like that in our online courses as well. And again, we always tell people in those courses, always follow the OEM procedure. It's not something that you can even, you can't say, well, I repaired this type of vehicle yesterday and now today I'm repairing the same vehicle. It might have changed. Yeah. Always look at that OE procedure before you get started on the repairs.
And that's a really good point. The fact that the OEMs, repairing a wire in most cases it's pretty similar. It doesn't matter which OEM, but the type of connector they want you to use and some of those things. So the OEMs do a pretty good job of having their specifics, but the ICAR can get you those foundational skills and knowledge you need to understand the OEM procedures.
And I guess the last piece to talk about on this topic anyway is if somebody's going to the RTS site and they can't find what they're looking for, they can use that Ask ICAR feature. And they can, I think your cycle time is less than 24 hours, is that right?
Well, we guarantee less than 24 hours, but our target is less than 2 hours to have you a response. So if it's something where there is no answer and it's something we have to escalate up to the OEM, we'll at least be able to reach back to you and say, here's a linking pin. We need to send that into the OEM for clarification. And that sometimes takes a little bit of time depending on the complexity of the question and where it might have to go. It might have to go overseas, over to Japan, Germany, to get their engineers to look at something and figure out what needs to be done in that particular case. So that's a great resource. We just did the Repairers Realm on the Honda roof, and that all started with an Ask iCar inquiry and getting a hold of Scott Caboose over at Honda and saying, hey, I'm looking at the procedure. The shop's confused. I'm a little confused. And so that kind of kicked off that Repairers Realm video off of that linking pin.
Nice plug. It's not related, but anybody that's not familiar with the iCar Repairers Realm, it is something that we send. We do the last Wednesday of every month at noon Central Time, and you can always go to the iCar website and check out the next scheduled Repairers Realm event. And I think it's even on iCar's YouTube page. You can go in and look at all of the past Repairers Realms. If somebody has a topic that they'd like us to consider, it's send us an email at repairersrealm@i-car.com. Had to get that plug in. I know it's not related, but got to plug the Repairers Realm. So now we go into the last piece that we want to talk about here, and this is one that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts. It's something that we've heard from the industry quite a bit, particularly from repairers, that they have a lot of challenges with post-repair safety inspections. And we had a summit around this several months ago. I got to say it's 6 months ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
And as some of the output from that summit, there was a request for iCar to create a page on our website that shops could use to submit information about these post-repair safety inspections that they're struggling with, to give us just some information, some insight, so that we can start to compile some data so that we can then go back to vehicle makers and others that are involved in this post-repair inspection or safety inspection process and get some clarity. And I see you've pulled up the form on the page. I think our challenge so far, though, is that 6 months in, I think we're 20 or less.
Yeah, about 15.
So that's a challenge. We need to, all those collision repairers out there that are struggling with this post-repair safety inspection, we need your help. We need you to go to the RTS site, and I'll let you give them some more information about that. But we need you to go to that site and help us out. Give us some information on this. Help us understand what you're struggling with on these post-repair safety inspections so that we can then compile that information and bring the group back together so that we can develop a best practice, or if nothing else, just help manufacturers understand what the challenges are so that we can get some clarity on that.
Yeah, so, and for the OEMs, I think there's been many years where nobody looked at repair procedures in collision. We didn't have a lot of repair procedures, and we were kind of always trying to do it on our own. And that's changed a lot. The OEMs have really stepped up the game on repair procedures, on the detail level. We have more repair procedures now in the last 5 years than we had in the previous 40. And they've done a great job of that. So now that we're looking at repair procedures, all of a sudden we're noticing maybe there's some areas that could use more attention. And I think the only way for the OEMs to know what the problem is for somebody to tell them. So with this form, that's what we're hoping to do. We want to get the best-in-class repair information for the industry. So even if we don't develop a best practice, if we can go to the OEMs and say, here is the kinds of information that we need in order to understand when we need to replace something or inspect something. So Audi has a great example where they actually tell you if there is deformation within so many millimeters of this module, you should replace it. So some of those documentable, black and white, here's what it is. This needs to be inspected and or replaced because there's deformation of that area. So that's kind of level of detail we want to get, so that the OEMs know what's going on. And also, we get a lot of pushback that, well, why are they having us do this inspection? It's just overkill. It was a minor collision, but we want to also find out, okay, are you finding things during these inspections that there is a problem with a part that you didn't expect to find a problem with?
And I think that's a good point. A couple of good points you made there. The first, we have seen through some of the information that's come back that even in a minor collision, when they're doing these post-repair inspections, occasionally they are finding things that you would have never imagined that they would have found in that inspection. So that helps explain why they're doing these inspections. I think the other important point to reinforce there is that the vehicle makers are very much in favor of, hey, tell us what we need to do. Tell us what we need to do to help clarify this, and we're in. So that's why we're looking for this information, so that we can pull this together and help them understand what it is that the industry needs. It's not a matter of they don't want to help. It's tell us what you need, and we'll step up. We'll help you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, that we have to help educate the engineers of what the collision industry needs, because they're not necessarily collision. They're used to the service side of things, and they're very detailed on the service side of things of how to diagnose these systems. But when it comes to a collision, there are so many unknowns, and if we can help them understand what some of those things are, they will be able to develop something.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so at this point, if we go back to what we started talking about with our Recycled Parts Summit, at this point, we've had the summit. You guys compiled the feedback, and it's now out to the participants. Is that right? We're out to the participants.
Yep.
They're reviewing it. They're going to get us some more feedback, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what's happening right now. And I just want to, on this form, you can find it on the RTS homepage. You can find it on the SRS inspection replacement search on the website. There's a link for it there as well. And there's also a CRN article that will also direct you to that form. So it's relatively easy to get to, and we want to get as many people submitting those forms as possible.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. A number of great services from the RTS team, and great resources to the industry. So for you and your team, kudos. Great job. All right. Thanks, guys.